Every story is the best story told in the right way. You've got piles and piles of material, each more majestic than the last. You know where you're going, but you can't get anything to fit together. Taking the time to write a synopsis or synopses is a great way to make sure you're telling the right story in the right way, rather than just telling an anecdote to an empty room. Hey love, welcome back to Tongue in Cheek, your most favouriteest place, all things storytelling. This is the third step in an 8-step process that will take your writing from amateur to professional using the most sacred of all documents, the Bible. Now, we're not building a religion, but you are trying to build a following. A Bible is your way to pitch your story in its entirety in a short, exciting document that will make any production company pay you whatever you want to write whatever you want to write. If you're early on in your journey and you can't commit months to writing any one project, a Bible will make you in the future kiss the ground you used to walk on, thanking you for making them such a beautiful piece of art that is going to reignite their passion for this project that you've once worked on. So far in this series, we've gone over what a Bible is and how to start making one of our own. Now, you may have noticed there was a slight gap between the last episode and this one. There's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly being that I have rebuilt the aesthetic of my website and my Instagram, a couple of other bits and pieces. So that's been taking some time. The other reason, the more important one, is that I got stuck with the Bible that I was writing as part of this series. And I debated whether or not to just knock the whole thing on the head, or whether I should start again, or whether I just carry on. Now, obviously, I've decided to just carry on, but what that does mean is that rather than make this Bible for Doctor Who, which is going to be subpar, if I just do it episode to episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it in the background, and then in the last episode, which, spoiler alert, will be how we put everything together, it will be then that I go through what I've made, why I've made it, and we'll go through some of it then. But that does mean that for now, we're not going to be having that section at the end. It's going to be purely just the educational bits. Okay. Speaking of those educational bits, today's episode is all about structure. Now, structure is what makes your story a story. And if you want a producer to produce your work, you need to give them the confidence that you know what you're doing. There are two types of structure when it comes to Bible writing. Episode structure. Some of the best Bibles out there are written for children's animation. Adventure Time, I've banged on about enough, but more recently I have found the original Bible for SpongeBob SquarePants, and that is equally as visually vibrant and exciting as Adventure Time. It's a beautiful piece of work. Now, of course, one of the things that sets cartoons apart from any other type of drama is the fact that it's episodic, basically meaning we don't need to worry about series arcs. But that doesn't mean you don't need to write your synopses. It just means you approach them slightly differently. When you're writing for something more episodic like a children's animation, what you do is you write outlines for a few example episodes. So ordinarily this would be the pilot, the first episode you want to be aired, and then a couple of other episodes, just to go through the ideal structure for each episode and how each of your characters reacts in certain situations. Think about The Simpsons. At the start of each episode of The Simpsons, something really strange and peculiar happens in a sort of cold open style, which has absolutely no bearing on the rest of the episode, but it does set up the action to come. That is a stylistic choice that separates The Simpsons from other animations. That is the kind of thing you're going for here. You want the basic mechanics of each story. Now, if you're going down this path, why not get really weird with it? If your pilot is a typical episode, then write another one that's completely bananas, and then write another one that's super dark, and then write another one which is just absolutely so tonally different. Maybe it's about a different character, maybe you're focusing on someone else entirely. Just write as many as you can. Write 10, write 50, write 100, and go through them and see which ones you think are the best example of what you would want to write should this thing get picked up. Don't actually write any scripts. That's your job if you're doing it for free at this point. More for you. Especially because in these kinds of things, there's more of a collaboration when it comes to actually producing the stuff. So there's no point writing a script that you've poured your heart and soul into that ends up not getting made. Easiest thing to do, write all these structures, write all these outlines, and then just pick a few and submit them. The other type of structure is series structure. Now, if your series charts one story, then producers need to know what that story is. They need to know where it starts, they need to know where it ends, and they need to know what happens in the middle, how many episodes it takes to get there. It's a lot, but it is important. And just because it's a lot doesn't mean it can't be fun. The Dirk Gently Bible looks like just a regular sort of Bible document, but when you read it, it is linguistically and tonally a joy to read. And it's what helped get that series produced. You know, you don't have to be Battlestar Galactica when it comes to these things. That said, you do have to be thorough. Every episode will need to be separated, and every episode outline should be roughly the same length. That's basically just because if it reads at the same length, the producer or yourself in the future is going to look at that and understand that there is a structure, there is a format to this thing. If it's the same length on the page, it's going to be the same length on the screen. Now, how long those synopses are is entirely up to you. I would recommend around 3/4 of a page to a page for each episode, and that's just because when you give this to someone, you want it to be thorough, but if you do slap a document on a producer's desk that is the size of an actual Bible, they are going to beat you out of their office with it. Just because Battlestar Galactica has those long ones doesn't mean you can get away with it. You know, they had the clout, they had the name behind them that meant that was a good sign. You're still quite early on in your career, more than likely. You want to make sure that you're open to collaboration. You don't have the clout to throw your weight around with great, big, enormous story Bibles. Now, the main things to include in each episode structure is obviously the characters that are going to be in it, the basic rundown of the action of the episode, the tone that the episode is going to strike, and obviously the overall series, and then the hook at the end of each episode, which is going to take them into the episode afterwards. If you're not sure what to include in the action outline, I would recommend using the 5-act structure. So you've got your world imbalance, inciting incident, turning point, false victory, and your overall victory. You're more than likely going to have 6 just because you're going to have that hook at the end, but I think breaking it down into that 5-act structure plus the hook is probably the best way to get a consistent structure out of your series. But again, that's entirely up to you because this is your story. This is the bit that really you want to put your heart and soul into. It's your chance to show off just how distinct and how unique your story is compared to anything else that's out there. So really go with it, have fun with it, but make sure it's thorough and that it's coherent. Be professional. Now, I mentioned at the start of the video that we would no longer be doing the Doctor Who sort of side-by-side task, but I still want people to get something out of these, so I will still be setting a task at the end of the episode, because at the start of this series I did ask people to come up with an idea of their own that they would make a Bible for, or to bring their idea to this series. So in line with that, there is still a task to do at the end of this one. In line with how much weight there is in the structure, it's a bit of a beefy one, so sorry, but it will help. Basically, the task is to write an outline. If you're writing a series, write the story from start to finish as what is essentially a vomit draft. If it takes you 2 pages, if it takes you 8 pages, if it takes you 15 pages, doesn't matter. Just get it out and don't look at any of your other notes. Literally start where you want the story to start, go right through to where it ends, and don't stop until you've got there. Once you've got there, read over what you've got, get a pen, a highlighter, indicate in your word processor whatever you've done. Just put in where each episode break naturally happens. Once you've got those natural episode breaks, I want you to go into each episode and rewrite it with the 5-act structure. You can now use all of your other notes and things like that you've got so far. And then once you've got those 5-act structures, you've got an outline for your series right there. At that point, start playing with it. Play with the visuals, play with the grammar, play with the formatting, introduce images if that's something you really want to do. Don't tweak the actual wording too much, but start having a play around with how you want to present it. Now, if you're writing something more episodic, don't do any of that. If you're writing something more kids animation or anthology style, what I want you to do instead is start with the 5-act structure, bullet points. No more than a line per bullet point. Come up with a few ideas for episodes, where they start, what the inciting incident is, what your turning point midway through the episode is, the rising action, and then the conclusion. I want you to write a few of those, 10 of them maybe. I then want you to go in to those, and I want you to beef them out to 10 bullet points per episode. So in between each bullet point, just write down something else that should happen in each episode, and then do that again, so you've got 15 bullet points. At that point, you can start to elaborate on them a bit if you want, but I'd rather you didn't, because I'd rather you looked at each of those bullet points and thought of a visual for each one of those. Pick some of your favourites and make your outline from that. So you've got 15 bullet points, which you can take the bullet points out and put them down as actual prose if you wanted to. But the bottom line is, once you're finished, you're going to have something that's distinctly visual that tells the story, whereas the people writing serial are going to have the story that is influenced by the visual. So those are your tasks. Pick one at your peril. And that's it. Slightly different approach this week, if slightly similar. And quite frankly, it's far easier for me to produce and get out to you. Next time, we'll be stepping back from the strictness of structure, and we'll start to have a look at setting. So that's the when, the where, and the world building of your story. In the meantime, you can check out my Instagram, which is @tongueincheekwriter, or you can check out my website, tongueincheekwriting.com, or linked down below. If you want some help with your writing projects, I do provide a proofreading and editing service on Fiverr, which again you can get from the link below. Until then, this has been fun.